How can devious licks be a teachable moment? Perhaps some of you have heard of a new trend called devious licks, where students steal, vandalize, and destroy school property and then post on social media accounts like TikTok. I was vaguely aware of this until this week, but if you have a middle or high school student, chances are they've heard of this. What can we do in response? Here's an idea. Have a day of dialogue. Here's a quick overview of my day of dialogue in 4 steps. Provide background, establish norms and guidelines, create questions to facilitate dialogue in circle, and lastly, include a closing to process the experience. Now, before I explain more about this lesson, let me share a disclaimer. First of all, this is just my experience, and it may not be right for every setting. Also, this lesson is designed more of as a space to process, dialogue, build mutual understanding, and hopefully compassion and civility. I had a positive experience trying out a lesson like this the previous year on a different topic, the surge in anti-Asian racism, where I was interviewed in an article on EdWeek on anti-Asian violence, what schools should start doing about it. I'll leave that in the description. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Step 1. Provide background. If you were to tell your students today, we're going to be learning theoretically, or we'll be learning about civil discourse and civility, I don't think there would be high interest. But once you mention TikTok and how many of you may have heard about the new trend going on through social media, now you have their attention for the rest of the day and they won't be able to stop talking about what they learned, and hopefully if the lesson goes well, how they learned how to respond in a good way. So with the situation, in order to provide background, I would, with emotion, read the announcement or public service announcement from our school. I would want the students to feel my concern and sadness over what is happening in the community. Step 2. Once again, it is important to remind students of guidelines, especially on days of dialogue, to speak and listen from the heart. In a previous EdFamily episode, I talked about building a social contract. This may be a good time to connect to your social contract and the kind of classroom that your class said that they wanted to learn in. In the structured academic controversy episode, I talked about building norms around what it means to be a friend, a civic friend. So yes, everything you've done since the beginning of the school year is important for having a day of dialogue today. Things that we've talked about in EdFamily, including knowing students by name, assets, and stories, the community building, elevating student voice, and active listening. Step 3. Questions for circle discussions. Round 1. What are your feelings about what happened or is happening? This is important for adults and especially important for students in building that social and emotional health and EQ. And as a social and emotional leader, you are also a participant in that circle discussion. As a teacher, you can also share how you are feeling about what is happening. Typically, I caution teachers to hold their personal opinions and elevate student voice, but when an act is morally reprehensible and there is no controversy around the issue, then this may be a healthy place for students to hear what the teacher is feeling, like the feeling of a school getting trashed. I might just say, when I heard this was happening at schools and some instance at our school, it made me feel very sad. When students are watching social media, it could look like everyone is doing. But really, it's such a small percentage of students. We have so many great students. So when students have the opportunity to hear one another's feelings about what's happening, I think it will be overwhelmingly against the trend. And this is an important experience for students because sometimes students are afraid to voice what they really feel. So whose voice gets heard? The loudest. And in this case, TikTok. Round 2. What feelings about the future do you have because of what happened? So naturally, if these kinds of trends are happening and continue to happen, there are going to be consequences and changes that happen to individuals and the school. What feelings do they have about that kind of future? Round 3. What do you feel is your responsibility to support our school family? Is there anything else that you would like to share? Students will have all kinds of ideas. Let them share in circle. Typically in circle, a talking stick is passed from person to person around the room and everyone gets an opportunity to speak. That is why it's helpful to do this in smaller groups. So if you can collaborate with another co-teacher or staff member, that helps to make the group smaller. However, I've also run days like this through apps like Pear Deck, where every student is typing a response into the Pear Deck system. I get to preview the responses in advance and can share out on some of what I read, or share out or have students share out on what it is that they wrote. And the writing before speaking is so helpful for students to sort through their thoughts and feelings. Lastly, we have the closing. What is one word that describes how this circle was for you? Hopefully, students had a positive experience, one in which they had voice, where they were heard, where they grew in their understanding, and the class grew in mutual understanding through dialogue. And they're leaving your class more compassionate. Today it's Devious Licks. I wish not, but tomorrow it may be something else. So perhaps the good that can come out of this is if we pass the baton of civil discourse to our students on how to handle problems and challenges that will come their way. Challenges that sometimes seem so big. What can one person do? Yet when folks come together in dialogue, speaking and listening from the heart with empathy and respect, perhaps that's where change can begin. First in ourselves. Thank you for all of you who are out there doing your part to strengthen student voice, choice, purpose, passion, agency, and action to help students figure out what they care about and then to do something good about it. This is Dr. Jeff from my EdFamily YouTube channel signing out.